Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're doing a deep dive into something really personal, but also, well, incredibly revealing about history and culture.
Hmm.
We're talking about the intricate world of Uyghur personal names, and we'll be using the source material you've shared with us to navigate this.
Sounds good. It's a fascinating area.
It really is. Our mission, basically, is to dig into how these names are so much more than just labels.
Right.
Based on these documents, they seem packed with layers of history, culture, identity. They really reflect the hopes and dreams of a people.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, just listen to some of these names from the material. Gulyar Khan, Gulam Khan, Guseda Khan, Gulam Khan,
Hmm.
Guzena Khan, Gulesham,
Baraji Khan, Tachi Khan.
Sari Khan, Zori Khan, Tensa Khan. They have such a powerful sound, don't they?
They really do. And the sources describe how these names, quote, whisper history, carry culture, and reflect a people's dreams.
Yeah, that quote really stuck with me. It captures it perfectly. And digging into the material, it's clear the structure, the makeup of these names.
Woo.
The sounds, the cultural roots, historical echoes. It's not random at all.
Not in the slightest. It's like they form a whole encyclopedia of Uyghur society.
An encyclopedia, yeah,
Yeah,
revealing these rich patterns, traditions carried forward for generations.
exactly. And choosing a name.
Mhm.
The sources really stress this. It's seen as one of the most significant steps in a person's life.
So not a casual decision.
Definitely not. Parents often put serious thought into it, even before the child's born. They're pouring their dreams, their joys, their hopes into the meaning, the symbolism.
It's like they're bestowing this cultural depth inherited from ancestors, from family.
Precisely. It connects the child to that lineage.
So the name isn't just, hi, I'm Bob, it's a vessel. Family history, cultural values, parental hopes, all packed in there.
Right, that's the idea.
And this is where our deep dive really starts. How do these names, based on the sources you sent, actually reveal the cultural uniqueness, maybe even the psychological world of Uyghur society, both historically and, well, today?
That's the key question, isn't it? And looking at the material, the answer really spans centuries.
Okay.
From the earliest periods described, we see Uyghurs using names deeply rooted in their environment, their spirituality, their work, their affections, just everyday life.
So names reflecting those really ancient connections, like nature, the spirit world.
Absolutely. The sources talk about names from early animist traditions. Think totemic names, nature-based names,
Yeah.
like Arslan, which means lion,
Arslan, okay.
or Kukbaru, the blue wolf. These are names tied to really significant animals or symbols in their worldview.
Kukbaru, blue wolf.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's Tengri, meaning son of heaven, which clearly reflects a connection to the divine sky god Tengri.
That's a very direct link to the heavens. You mentioned Kukbaru striking. The material also mentions names from heavenly bodies and weather.
Yes, a strong connection to the cosmos there. Names like Axin, Norhan, Yultus, which means star,
Star,
right?
right.
Shopmankan, meaning lightning. These aren't just descriptions. They carry symbolic weight, power.
Definitely. And it wasn't all grand and spiritual. The sources mention more practical names too.
Oh, yes. Alongside the grand, you find names honoring the practicalities of life, the dignity of work. Names using tools, household items, like Palta, which is axe.
And it acts as a name.
Yes. Or Superge, a broom,
Mm,
Quellum, a pen. It grounds the naming tradition in daily life, too.
interesting. And the sheer beauty of the natural world itself, that must be there.
It certainly is very prominent. Names drawn from flora and fauna, like
Mhm.
Golbahar, spring flower,
That's lovely.
or Shamshad, box tree,
Yeah.
Turak, poplar tree, Bulbul, the nightingale. They evoke beauty, resilience, this harmony with nature,
Hmm.
and also names derived from precious materials. Think Altun for gold, Kumush for silver.
Gohar for gem, margin for coral.
Exactly. Representing value, purity, strength. These early layers are incredibly rich.
So you've got these deep roots connecting people to the earth, the sky, their tools, the beauty around them.
Mm.
How does that landscape change when major religions like Buddhism and Islam become influential?
Well, religion brings a really significant transformation to naming practices, according to the sources.
Okay.
With the arrival of Buddhism, for instance, you start seeing names like Berkson, which directly translates to Buddha. That becomes common.
Right. Burks and Buddha. Makes sense.
Then later, and perhaps most prominently, with the widespread adoption of Islam, names from prophets, their companions, key figures, they gain immense popularity.
So Muhammad, Fatima, Ali, Yusuf, those kinds of names.
Precisely those. very common and revered.
And I noticed the material mentioned something interesting, that these religious names were often combined with existing Uyghur elements, not just a direct replacement.
That's a really key point. It shows a synthesis,
Yeah.
a blending of cultures and influences rather than one just wiping out the other.
So it wasn't erasing the old, but adding a new layer.
Exactly. You get names like Tursunisa emerging, which blends an Arabic root with Uyghur elements. It demonstrates this unique cultural integration quite beautifully.
Integration, not just adoption. That's fascinating. And then this is where it gets really interesting for me, seeing how history itself, events, ideologies actively shapes naming.
Oh, absolutely. Historical eras leave a very distinct footprint on names. The sources highlight, for example, how the 20th century saw a rise in names reflecting new political and ideological currents.
Right, like reflecting the times.
Exactly. Names like Azat, which means freedom,
Mm-hmm.
Islahat, meaning reform, Ilgar, progress, Jamhuriyet, republic.
Wow, those names aren't subtle at all, are they?
No, they're very direct statements. They capture the hopes, the struggles, the aspirations of that specific period.
You can almost read the political mood just from the popular names. What about more contemporary trends? Does the material touch on that?
It does. More recently, the material indicates a bit of a shift again. Names have trended towards emphasizing things like knowledge, aesthetics, spiritual value, maybe in a broader sense.
Okay, so less overtly political, more personal or philosophical.
Kind of. Examples given include names like Navshad, Meripet, which means knowledge or culture, and Bilamdar, meaning a learned person.
Mary Pet Bilamdar. Yeah, you can see that focus on learning, on refinement.
It reflects changing societal priorities, doesn't it? What becomes valued.
It really is like looking at a time capsule of values and priorities just by examining the popular names of an era. Incredible.
Exactly. The sources make it really clear these names aren't static labels. They evolve right alongside the history, the culture, the focus of the society itself.
But like any living tradition, it faces modern challenges, right? The material you shared touches on some concerns.
Yes, as society changes, new issues inevitably emerge. The sources point out concerns being voiced by Uyghur intellectuals today.
Like what kind of issues?
Things like certain names becoming perhaps overused, losing some distinctiveness,
Hmm.
a potential loss of, let's say, traditional pronunciation, or the depth of meaning. Maybe sometimes arbitrary choices, or names being assigned regardless of gender in ways that deviate from older customs. There's a perception, at least among some, of a decline in the depth of meaning in some contemporary naming.
So is there a pushback, an active movement or advocacy for preserving that richness?
The material certainly suggests there is. Many are advocating for a more thoughtful revival of traditional naming practices.
Another revival, okay.
Yeah, but the goal isn't necessarily strict adherence to the past, like forcing old names. It's more about preserving the profound cultural and historical richness while still allowing for creativity and, names that resonate with modern values.
Finding that balance between heritage and the present.
Exactly. Keeping the meaning alive.
So when we sort of pull back and look at everything we've discussed, from ancient animal spirits and nature names through religious influence, historical events, right up to modern aspirations and these preservation efforts, what does this all really mean in the grand scheme?
Well, it just underscores how incredibly significant these names are. The sources really conclude by emphasizing that Uyghur names act as vital bridges between generations.
Bridges. I like that.
Yeah, and powerful carriers of cultural memory, and fundamentally reflections of both individual and collective identity. They hold so much.
So whether they connect you to the stars above, the soil below, ancient wisdom, or the hopes of today, the material makes a really compelling case that these names truly, truly matter.
They absolutely do.
So we've journeyed through this incredible depth woven into Uyghur names. We've explored their roots in nature, spirituality, the influence of major religions, historical shifts, right up to modern values, and the challenges of keeping this tradition vibrant.
It really does highlight how a name can be, well, a living piece of history and culture, telling a story far beyond just simple identification.
Absolutely. They are bridges, like you said. Carriers of memory, reflections of identity, deep stuff. So as you, our listener, reflect on this deep dive into the rich tapestry of meaning held within Uyghur names, maybe consider this provocative thought. Given this deep history, these varied influences embedded in the names, what happens when that connection to meaning, that historical, cultural bridge, is challenged? When it's weakened or perhaps even threatened?
Yeah, and maybe also, how does understanding these profound sort of silent histories carried by names like Guyar Khan or Kwikweru, how does that make you think about the stories and traditions potentially held within the names you encounter every day? Perhaps even in your own community, your own culture. What's hidden in plain sight?